G'day team, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be going through how to draw in and how to kind of calculate the cut and fill that's going to be required. So this is part 3 in a topography series that I've been going through, and it's something that I'm always having to address with staff that we're training because, I mean, it's complicated, I'm not going to lie. So today we're going to be going through. We know how to read a contour map now. We know how to draw a basic topography depending on whether it's a manual method or on an automatic method. Now we're going to take that knowledge and information a step further and work out what to actually do with the cut and fill that is on a property. So we have here a very, just a stock standard floor plan on a pretty standard looking site. There's a few things that you want to address before you start trying to draw in, pad and cut and fill and all these kinds of things. So first things first is you want the house to be with kind of like minimum setbacks. So the house has to be in the right spot. You can see here, I've put in some really, really basic dimensions. Let's just make them a bit more readable. And this is kind of half of the normal information that we'd normally show. Generally, you want to go about 6 meters to a garage. And generally, 1500 is pretty comfy for a side boundary to a garage. And then, 2.5 to the other side is pretty okay. Because we've got a survey, something else to look out for is there already a crossover on the site? So if we had... if there was a crossover on this survey and it was on this side, 9 times out of 10, the developer is going to want to flip this house. And I have done a video on how to mirror a project if that's the case. So if you're looking at this and you're looking at your house and then your surveys come in and the crossover's on the other side, check out my video about how to flip a project. But there's no existing crossover here. So it should be easy enough to just draw in a driveway here. So first things first, you have to establish whether where you've got the house is going to be too steep of a driveway. And I know it sounds like I'm kind of deviating, like you would have clicked on this video thinking, wanting to learn how to calculate cut and fill. But it's kind of pointless to draw that unless you're really confident that the house is in the right spot. And in this situation, the driveway is not going to be too steep. So, I mean, like once you've established where the house is and what your rough cut fill or pad level is going to be, one of the first things you want to do is work out the approximate driveway gradient. If it's, more than 1 in 8, you're good to go. Don't worry about it. If it's a bit steeper, you might have to work out some transitions. I haven't addressed this in any videos yet because that's another whole technique in itself, but I will do in the future. But it's one of those important things. You don't want to end up drawing the whole battle banks and then working out that the driveway is too steep and you have to, readjust. But yeah, we'll keep going. You can see by the contour labels here, 20.2, 20.4, You can see by the contour labels here, 20.6 down to 20. So this is the low side of the property. This is the high side of the property. So once we're pretty happy that this house is in the right spot, we can determine a pad level or a cut fill line. If we look at this corner, it looks like it's about 20.1. These are 100 mil contour intervals. So remembering the contour map video I made, so 20.1, 20.2, these means that's 20.1, 20.3, 20.5. So this is actually a really kind of a flat site, but that won't let us get in the way of a good story. So this corner of the house is 20.1. This corner of the house is 20.5. So there's 400 mil of cut and fill between this corner and this corner. So this should be a really easy one to work out. Halfway between the cut and the fill is going to be 20.3, but you always want to have more cut than fill. So cutting is done by a digger just digging into the earth and scraping it away. And then ideally what you would use, what you've cut away for, is the fill on the other side of the property. What you don't want is a little tiny bit of cut And then all of this fill, which then has to be imported and, you know, brought in on trucks and dumped in. That's expensive, it takes a while, and builders just generally just hate it. So when establishing a cut and fill, a 60-40 rule is pretty good. So if you go 60% cut, 40% fill, the builder's hopefully never going to be in a situation where they've got to import fill to, you know, to complete the job. Sometimes it's unavoidable. It's just one of those, you know, like a heuristic to just try and make things easier, or, you know, a rule of thumb, whatever you want to call it. So let's say the cut fill line on this project is 20.25. So I've got a little layer called cut fill. You can draw this in whatever you like. It's probably going to be a good idea to either go wireframe or something so that you can see, because we're going to be drawing between these two contours, a line like here. So I'll use the spline tool. That's pretty much it. So all of this back here is going to be cut, and all of this back here is going to be fill. So if our pad is 20.25, most pad to finished floor levels are around 300 mil. So we'll say the FFL is going to be 20.550. Now, if our finished floor level is 20.5 and there's no step between the house and the garage, so the FFL of the garage is also 20.5, we can now work out our driveway gradient. So down in the corner here, it looks like it's about, let's just call it 19.9. So, and that's just based on that being the 20 meter contour. That's got 19.9. It's kind of like probably about 20 here, but we'll give it a worst case scenario and say that the RL there is 19.9. So now we have, if you're drawing a triangle, which all driveways are just triangles, we've got a 6 meter length and we've got a rise between here and here. So 20,550 minus 19,900 is a rise of 650 mil. So 650 mil, so obviously 650 between here and here. 650 divided by 6 meters, which is the length. So that's 1 in 9.2, which is good. I'm fine with that. A 1 in 9 driveway is good to go. So now I am happy and confident to continue with the pad here. So what we're going to draw now is the actual cut and fill itself. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is to draw the pad around the house. So we'll use the pick line tool. We'll do an offset of 900 mil, which is pretty standard. And then we're going to trace the boundary of the house. All right, now that I've got that, I'm going to turn that into a group. And then I could have clicked open in group editor, but we'll just have to go edit group now. All right, we've got this. Let's add our cut fill line. So it's part of the group. Go finish. Now we can start to trim and edit and manage this. So I don't like having internal corners when I'm doing these things. I feel like they're unnecessary and they just complicate things. So first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the internal corners. Next, I'm going to round the edges. So if it's a 900 mil pad, we'll just kind of go roughly to 900. And the reason I round the edges is because I'm then going to offset those lines equidistant to whatever height they need to be. Okay, cool. So we have our 0 level, and then we have some corners to work with. Now we know that these contours are at 100mm intervals. So if we've drawn in between the contours and we're then counting to get the distance between the 0 level and each of these corners, all we have to do is count in between these contours. So 100, 200. So there's 200 mil of rise between this line and this corner here, approximately. You don't want to be saying it's 175 mil. Like that's crazy. So 100, 200. Generally, when drawing batter banks, you want to start at a gradient of 1 in 4, and then you kind of get more extreme as needed. So 1 in 4, 200 times 4 is, I'm bad at math, but I know that's 800. Excellent. 100, 200, 300. Let's call that 1200. 100 mil there, so 0, 100. So let's just call that 400. So whatever the distance is between each of these corners and our 0 level, just multiply that by 4. So between here and here, it's about 400 as well, because it's kind of in between the same contour. It looks like it's quite flat there. Where I don't have a rounded edge, I'll just draw a circle and trim it around. And then this is 100, 150. Okay. So this is starting to take shape now. It might not to you, but it certainly is to me. We can drag these edges around. Now, because I've drawn this circle here, I'm going to use the split line tool and cut a hole in it so that then I'm able to use it as a kind of like a launching, just a connecting point between these here. So back into our line tool, we'll use the quadrant there and then connect it to the tangent there. And then the same thing here. This is going to connect to the 0 line because it's transitioning from cut to fill. So when drawing this point in, so this is a pointer for the next video, which is going to be how to actually modify our topography to reflect the cut and the fill. But just to save you some dramas there, when drawing this point in, I'm going to turn thin lines off. Don't actually create a closed loop here. You want the where the edge of the cut or the fill meets this line. You don't want it to be exactly the same point as the interior edge. So I'm just going to draw it out to here. And the reason being that when you're using the split line, well, the split surface tool to cut the topography into multiple parts, it really hates it if points are actually intersecting. So that's just a little tip for the future. Okay, so it's a bit of a weird one here. I might just put a circle there just to not feel gross. And I think the problem with working in edit group mode is the incessant beeping. So apologies for that. I'll try to edit it out, but yeah. So there to there. Yeah, that makes sense because that's further out of the ground than here, so it kind of, that's the most extreme part. I think it's because I'm so hardwired to pressing space after every time I do a command, whereas you don't need to do that in edit group mode, but I'm so far deep in my bad habits that I can't. I'm too hardwired. Okay, cool. Look, that is, ooh, That's what I like to see. The only other thing that's missing from this projection of cut and fill is like the batter bank arrows. So I have a little line-based detail component called a batter arrow. I guess I'll make a quick video on how to actually make this, but it really just helps with drawing in a very basic 2D arrow like this. You can, you know, if this is your first time doing this, you can just kind of, and then mirror it like that, and then trim the lines off. Like there's nothing wrong with doing that. But if you're in the business of doing these things all the time, I'd highly recommend making a little detail component. So something else that's easy to get wrong is the direction that these arrows are supposed to face. And I could never really think of a good way to remember it, because it the way that these arrows face, it actually is like quite important. Because you should be able to look at one of these like batter bank diagrams and know, okay, this is the cut and this is the fill. The thing that tells you that is these arrows. But how do you remember which way they go? The way that I'm currently describing to people, and it might not be the best solution in the world, is you think of the direction. So think of the excavator on site actually digging into the ground and then pushing the rest out. So the arrow is the direction that the bucket is going, right? So when we're doing cut, like up here, it's going into the grounds and it's pulling it towards the house because it's cutting into the land. When it's doing fill, it's kind of like pushing out. That's kind of how I'm remembering it at the moment. Is that the most elegant thing in the world? Probably not, but yeah, fill is going away from the house, cut is going towards the house. It's kind of also, you could think of it as which direction is the land traveling. Is it going down towards the house? If it's going down, it's pointing towards the house. If it's pointing away from the house, it's going also down, but yeah, it's not easy, and it's something people get wrong a lot. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Hey, so the next thing that you would be doing beyond this would be actually modeling the topography to suit, these batter banks. But yeah, the thing that also very important is you have to label which side's cut and which side's fill. So this side is cut because this is higher than this side. So this is the high side, this is the low side. If our pad or zero level is in here, anything beyond that is cut, anything below that is fill. The other way to think about it is, let's say this is our house. Houses have to be flat, generally speaking. So let's say our pad level is 20.250. Here is 20.8. So let's go up 650. Down here is 20. So between here and here, the land does this. So this is our house. This is the natural ground. This is the edge of the pad, and this is the cut and the fill. So 20.250 actually extends out to here, and then between here and here, it goes up like that. So pad, cut, because it's underground. Same deal here, this extends out. This is the edge of the fill. Down. So let's split this, trim this, trim this. This is all ground. And then we know that the natural ground, so prior to being cut, is between here and here. That's all we're doing, that's it. That doesn't look like much because this is quite a flat site, but yeah, that's it. The next video is going to be very important for sussing out how to do this. The next part. This is all fine, but it means nothing unless you're actually modeling the modifying the topography as well. But yeah, so a few rules of thumb is you have to make sure that the house is in the right spot. You have to make sure that the driveway works. Those are two things that we've got to nail down pretty quick, because if the driveway doesn't work, you have to move it up and down. And the cut fill line, if you move it up and down, move the pad line up and down, this line will kind of either be here or wherever. You want to draw the pad in. So 900 mil between the external wall and then the edge of the pad, that's kind of minimum. Go 1,000 if you can. Work out each of the corners between the height difference between our cut and fill line and then each of these corners. And then you want to multiply that number by 4 to get a batter of 1 in 4. You can, if you're running out of space, you can do 1 in 3, 1 in 2, 1 in 1. So, if this is 100, 250, so let's say that's 250. If this batter was at 1 in 1, that's the size of it. It's tiny, whereas 1 in 4 is out here. So it's just a space thing. If you start running out of space between pad and boundary, then you can start reducing the depth of the batter. That's all good. But yeah, I think that's it. Hey, like I'm currently at 25 minutes of recording, and yeah, it doesn't need to go any longer than this. If I've forgotten anything, I'll try and include it in the next video, but that's a fairly comprehensive run through of a pretty complicated topic, which is difficult to teach. So I find in video form, it's easy for you to just kind of go and pause and listen and work your way through it. But that's the gist of it. Very important stuff to know if you want to be drawing house plans. I hope you got something out of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you all soon. Cheers. Bye.